Cameras these days are becoming more and more sophisticated, some with state-of-the-art technology, fast autofocus, and superb image quality. But they're also becoming more and more expensive. That's a kidney. And that's not even including the lenses. Thankfully though, there's a solution for this where you get to keep your kidneys. Introducing the Hedonic Mini Digital Camera, which only costs $40 with a discount. This camera is so tiny, even my collectibles can use it. I might as well call it a toy camera. No man can definitely kill you now. And today I'm attempting to take epic landscapes with this thing. Can it be done? I don't even know what I'm photographing now. I don't really know. Before we do this, I need to test and understand what I'll be working with, because there is no way that this camera took these photos. So according to the website, it says it has a 1-star review. It has 2000 megapixels. And by comparison, this Sony full-frame camera has 24 megapixels. So, wow. The first thing that I need to figure out, and this is very, very important, is what is the actual focal length of this camera. Now, the lens on this thing says that it's a 3.2mm, which sounds very, very wide, but remember that the sensor is going to be severely cropped. And the website even says that it's not applicable. But after a little bit of research, I think it's going to land at 1/10 inch of a sensor, which effectively, after doing some camera mathematics, I think should be at around 87mm. So let's head out and see if it's going to be correct. The reason why knowing the focal length of this camera is important for this challenge is, again, I'm attempting some epic landscape photography, which usually looks something like this and requires me to be on incredible locations. But since I can't zoom in or out with this thing, then it means that I need to move my feet. Doing that on the streets, not so complicated, but on a hike, it's not always possible. So the screen on this thing is very, very tiny, very, very pixelated, but from what I'm seeing, the effective focal length is a lot wider than 87mm. So perhaps my camera mathematics a while ago was wrong. The next thing that I'm going to be interested to find out is how horrible the dynamic range of this camera is. Now, the dynamic range is simply the difference between the brightest and the darkest points that the camera can capture. The wider this range is, the more information we have for editing later on. Can this thing shoot RAW? I don't think it shoots RAW. Not gonna lie, having this thing around my neck in the city is a little bit embarrassing, but I'm gonna see this through because of a little thing called the sunk cost fallacy. I'm already way too invested with the idea of this challenge at this point. But doing this walk right now, it does make me understand more about the challenges of using this thing and gives me some ideas of where to hunt for the landscapes later. If you're wondering how advanced this thing really is, it only has 3 buttons. A power button, which by the way is also the shutter, so you can imagine how things can go wrong really fast. What? It died? A mode button to toggle between photo and video. And I know I'm just as surprised as you are that this thing can shoot video. And a special button to apply some filters, if you can call those filters. Doing this test run, setting up the composition was definitely challenging because the viewfinder is basically useless and the screen is very tiny. Since the camera is also very light, pressing the shutter also shakes the framing, and then there's a shutter lag that you need to consider. With the thinking that this thing is not to be taken seriously, it's actually quite fun for what it is. I mean, it's a toy. So if you're into using quirky cameras, there are some goofy ones out there, some with very cute designs like Hello Kitty. So looking at the screen at the back, it's very easy to overexpose your images, but I find that tilting the camera upwards helps a bit as you include more sky in the frame. The camera just adjusts the settings from there. But yeah, looking at the pixelated screen, the results aren't too bad, but of course I still need to go back home and take a better look. But yeah, this gives a very nostalgic feeling to those of you who still remember how very old phone camera photos look. They look like shit. Okay, so finished with the test shots, and let's just say they were not 2000 megapixels. I should have known better because I just noticed that from the packaging it says it has 1.2 megapixels. So I may have been scammed a bit. So does that mean that we can't take epic landscape photos with this tiny camera? Well, just because it's tiny doesn't mean it can't perform well. I'm not talking based on experience. Kowloon Peak is where I decided to take the toy camera for a spin. Usually it looks something like this with some very glorious views of the city and hiking trails. The day had other plans. I think the main challenge right now is that this thing, I can't adjust the settings, and the view in front of me has a lot of dynamic range. So the background foggy cityscapes is overexposed and my foreground is going to be quite dark. So I need to figure out a photo that can overcome that. And if anyone ever told you gear doesn't matter, it's a lie. After looking around for potential frames, I realized that the limitations I thought of during the test round were much harder for landscapes. The fog rolling over on that side is quite impressive, to be honest. I just don't know how to capture that with this thing because I can't really zoom in or out. Everything's overexposed or underexposed in the photo. Thankfully, I brought my Sony as well so I can take photos until I find the toy camera shots because honestly, it was really challenging. I don't even know why I'm doing this challenge in the first place anymore. It's all for your entertainment. Like and subscribe. As a taste of the challenge I was trying to solve, I can't even get these flowers correctly exposed. The compositions here are a little bit plain, so I'm gonna take a side trail to a spot called the Suicide Cliff, which sounds intimidating, but having a tiny purple camera around my neck makes it a little less intimidating now. I may have overcommitted to this joke and just taking this tiny camera up a treacherous climb. Ooh, it's definitely something. So the plan right now is, because I have that dynamic range problem with the camera, is to wait as the light gets a bit softer. Maybe the exposure will not be as bad. Well, at least that was the idea. It didn't sound too bad in my head. You know, less light means I won't overexpose the highlights. And as the hike went on, I was just enjoying myself. That background sure is epic. Rolling fog, covering and swallowing the cityscape. I was definitely having a great time that I even made a very bold claim. I think with these conditions, I can probably call myself as the photographer who has the most epic shots taken by a toy camera. That's probably a title no one wants to have. Well, that wasn't really the worst photo I've ever seen, so I thought I could do even better as I arrived my final stop. So I've just arrived at the epic spot. The famous Suicide Cliff is over there if I go down, but I think I'm not going to because that background sure is epic. Rolling fog, covering and swallowing the cityscape. So far, the most annoying thing about this camera is that it keeps dying because it doesn't detect me pressing the shutter button, and if there's a period of inactivity, it just shuts down on its own. I'm gonna keep hearing that sound in my sleep. But so far, I believe this video is gonna be the dumbest one on my channel. As a reference point, these next two photos from Sony are what I wanted to try and recreate with a toy camera. And well, here are the results of that shoot. So can I take epic landscape photos with just a cheap toy camera? Probably not, but it was a lot of fun. If you thought the same, then why don't you check on this video? I'll see you there. Thanks for watching.